Nothing was weirder about this week than Michigan humiliating Alabama. The final score, of course, being Michigan 19, Alabama 13. That's it. That was the final score. And in the first quarter, the score was Michigan 16, Alabama nothing. And Alabama gave up 3 turnovers inside of their own territory. Excuse me right there. But yeah, nothing was weirder this week than Michigan humiliating Alabama by a score of 19-13. Both teams had under 300 total yards. Both teams had at least 1 turnover. Alabama had 3, Michigan had 1. Michigan had 38 minutes and 12 seconds of possession. And the 7-5, 5-4 defending national champions who didn't even reach the college football playoff or come close humiliated the first team out in the 11th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, who fell to 9-4, and for the first time since 2007, Alabama did not achieve double-digit wins. Just got to shrug your shoulders at that. There's nothing else to say. Alabama is the most talented roster in the nation, according to recruiting rankings. Michigan had almost all, if not all, of their first-rounders opt out. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, they weren't playing. Will Johnson continued his tradition of the previous few games of not playing due to an injury. Colston Loveland didn't play. Donovan Edwards didn't play. Kalel Mullings didn't play. Michigan had a few players in the transfer portal. Miles Hinton, their best offensive lineman, didn't play. And yet Michigan was just getting endless pressure on Jalen Milroe and the Crimson Tide. Michigan was just doing so well on defense in this game. They held Alabama to 2.3 yards per carry, 68 rushing yards. Milroe only had 7 yards on the ground. He had a QBR of 26.4, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And again, in that first quarter, I say again because we already talked about the 3 turnovers, but all 3 of those turnovers came in the first quarter for Alabama, and all of them were inside of Alabama territory. Even the first drive Alabama had, where it was a turnover on downs, not a fumble or a pick, Michigan sacked Alabama all the way back in their own territory, despite them snapping the football at Michigan's somewhere in between the 45 and 40-yard line. I want to say the 41, 42. It was 4th and 1. Bama wanted to throw, and Michigan just sacked Milroe into the turf. So before I get any further into this, I want to invite you all to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and also comment your reaction to this game down below. And I have a few questions for you. Number 1, I want to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pressure, competitive pressure of course, I don't think Kalen DeBoer's on the hot seat after 1 year at Alabama, but maybe he is. How much competitive pressure is Kalen DeBoer under at Alabama entering 2025? How much competitive pressure is also on Sherrone Moore entering 2025? And what are your expectations for these 2 teams entering 2025, entering next season? For Michigan, do you think they have to go to the playoffs or the season's a failure? For Alabama, that's obviously the case, but do you think they need to make a playoff run or the season is a failure? And also, specifically to Michigan, does this restore faith a little bit in Michigan's program, in their culture, in a coaching staff that I put a lot of heat on, that many others put a lot of heat on early in the season, or do you need to see more? Answer those down in the comment section below. And if you want to support the channel and also talk college football and engage with me via the Discord server, check out the links in the pinned comment and the description where you can join the Discord server where we talk college football 24/7. And also you will find ways there, merchandise store, Patreon page, to support the channel monetarily. And again, like, subscribe, hit the bell, share the video around, do all those things. It's very important to hit the bell, that way you get notified when I go live like we are right now. So getting back to what was the ReliaQuest Bowl, what was crazy was just how quickly things unraveled for Alabama. And I feel like part of it was they didn't want to be there, but if you're an Alabama fan, that's not what you want to hear. You don't want to hear that your team just quit when they faced adversity, because Alabama, what they failed to do is control the controllables this season. They beat Georgia, a Georgia team that now we know, of course, is limited, and we've known that for a while now, given their losses in the regular season to Alabama, to Ole Miss, how they've played week to week, near losses to Georgia Tech and to Texas. Felt like they were kind of outrunning the speeding train, and it was Notre Dame who ended up being the speeding train and not any other team. But the Crimson Tide, beat Georgia. They looked electric at times the first few weeks. Then they lost to Vanderbilt, a historic loss. They then, of course, lost to Tennessee in a game where Tennessee did to Alabama very much what Michigan kind of did. Jalen Milroe couldn't run. Tennessee's defensive line was eating up Alabama's offensive line, and therefore Tennessee didn't have to do much offensively to win. And then Oklahoma, kind of the same deal. Oklahoma shut Alabama down. And what do we see right here? Same thing. Alabama just wasn't elite enough on defense to negate their offensive issues, and their offensive issues were very deep. Jalen Milroe struggles to read the field. He struggles with accuracy. He relies on his athleticism a bit too much. And Alabama's supporting cast isn't perfect. The offensive line, for all of its talent, is not properly developed. It's overrated. The rushing attack, kind of the same deal because of how it depends on the offensive line and also Jalen Milroe's legs. Outside of Ryan Williams, they don't really have an X-factor wide receiver, and his production has tanked as the season has gone on. Early in the year, him and Jeremiah Smith were understandably comparable true freshman prospects. Ryan Williams has alien talent, but he sort of disappeared as the season's gone on because people figured out Alabama. And I think it was the wise decision for both Alabama and also for Milroe to go to the NFL draft. I think that with how limited this current QB class is, it's just better for Jalen Milroe to go off to the NFL where he still has potential, where he has some good characteristics, and an NFL team can try to make use of his services and maybe develop him. For Alabama, they need a new quarterback if they want to win at a high level, especially with their head coach, Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer needs someone who is an effective elite passer. Jalen Milroe was not that. And the only way Jalen Milroe was going to work in Kalen DeBoer's system, the legs were always going to be an added bonus for Milroe in this Kalen DeBoer offense. They were not intended to be the feature. And they just, for whatever reason, couldn't develop him into a vastly superior passer. So that's the Alabama side of things. For the Michigan side of things, Michigan was able to get pressure. Michigan had 5 sacks, 6 TFLs. Michigan did not run the football well, but they ran it often. They had 51 carries for 115 yards, 2.3 yards per carry. Jordan Marshall had 4.3 yards per carry, 100 rushing yards, long of 24 on 23 carries. He looked like a trooper, even as a true freshman, and that's a bright sign for Michigan's future at running back, as they have Benjamin Hall, Justice Haynes from Alabama, backup running back to Jam Miller. He's transferring in to Ann Arbor. Davis Warren, 9 of 12 for 73 yards, actually had a QBR of an 88.8, 1 touchdown, 6.1 yards per pass attempt. I think a huge part of that was probably the good field position that he was always in due to Alabama turnovers and the fact that really no special teams unit outside, of course, Michigan's kicking game and a bit of Alabama's kicking game too. Graham Nicholson made a long field goal of 51, really showed out. Alabama only had one. They didn't even have one punt inside the 20. It was a touchback. I was misreading that there. Hudson Holdenbeck from Michigan had 2 punts inside of the 20. Both punters had pretty good averages, but special teams outside of kicking was not the real story. It was turnovers. It was fundamental soundness. It was the fact that Alabama was slipping and sliding all across the field, and Michigan was only doing that when they were celebrating a first down. Like, Michigan was the more balanced team, literally. They weren't slipping and sliding and falling everywhere. They looked more prepared. They looked like they wanted it more. And that's a credit to Michigan. It's an explanation as to why Michigan won. It's a deep concern if you're Alabama. And circling back to Michigan, what do we make of Michigan's staff entering 2025? Because I still have my questions. I genuinely do. I think Sherrone Moore has progressed and improved as the year's gone on, but I think Michigan still needs a whole lot more out of him and his staff and also his roster before they can say that he's the guy. I wonder with Wink Martindale how much of the past few games' success has been a credit to him, the talent he has, or the limitations of the offenses he's played. I mean, think about Indiana. They have a talent limitation. Michigan had the line of scrimmage advantage, and they don't have an alien player on offense. Ohio State has alien players everywhere on offense, but Michigan's D-line is so good that they just blew up Ohio State's offensive line, and Ohio State wanted to run the football and insisted on doing so even when it didn't work. And as for Alabama, a little bit unmotivated. They've been clunky on offense all season long, and Michigan once again had a line of scrimmage edge on defense. So with Wink Martindale and the defensive staff, I like a lot of the coaches there, but I also like a lot of the coaches that Alabama, let's say, has. And the reality for these two teams and what they can find in common is this season has not been good enough for Alabama or for Michigan. The Alabama and Michigan programs should be ashamed of these two seasons, and they need to figure things out. They have to rebound. They have to move on, because otherwise, next season, if the pressure cooker isn't already turned up to high, it will be for these two programs if these seasons are replicated. I mean, if Jalen DeBoer goes 9-4 again next year, people are talking about him on the hot seat. If Michigan goes 8-5 next year with a schedule that looks more favorable than this year's, Sherrone Moore will be on the hot seat. So, down years for two college football blue bloods who over the past 3-4 years have played for national championships, have won playoff games. In the 2020s decade, Alabama has won a national championship. So has Michigan. They've been at the top of college football in terms of developing NFL talent. So we'll see what happens in 2025. More of an optimistic outlook for Michigan after that bowl game than Alabama. But again, bowl games aren't what they used to be. A lot of opt-outs on both sides. Just a few things to keep in mind, my reaction and assessment of the game. Alabama could just never crawl back after that early deluge of Michigan defense, of pressure, of forcing turnovers, of capitalizing on their opportunities. And that resulted in a 19-13 Michigan win, which Alabama opened up the game as an 11.5-point favorite, and the line rose to 16.5. Everyone was betting Alabama to cover. Huge, huge win for Vegas. Basically free money, taking candy from a baby for Vegas, is I think almost 90 or 80% of all the money was placed on Alabama to not just win, but to cover. My goodness, just absolute disaster for the public. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who you know enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation, because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Kylo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page, or super chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.